And I'm just trying to plan my attack here as to where to go. The ellies are on some thick bush here. I'll just stop to let Teb show you a glimpse of them moving off before we try and work out what to do next. So let's reposition and try and get ahead of them. It's very thick, the bush that they're moving through, but if we're patient, I'm sure they'll pop out into an area where we can get a better view. Jamie is also in this general area. She's going to be heading across to the hyena den to check up on the 2 new additions. Yesterday morning, 2 new tiny hyena cubs were seen for the first time, I believe. So she's heading back there to check up on that. And I'm told there's now, I think, 5 different cubs in the hyena den. So a lot going on with the hyena clan. There's also been quite a lot of violence with the hyenas. We were chatting about that earlier. A couple of months back, I caught the tail end of a fight where one hyena had been very, very badly injured. Its back 2 feet had been chewed into a pulp. Its ears gnawed quite badly. One looked like it was about to fall off. And sadly, that hyena hasn't been seen again since that day. It could still be okay. There's been some remarkable success stories with hyenas recovering from fights of a similar nature. Well, the good news is we have managed to loop ahead of these ellies, and we're about to get some great views of them. Just going to stop here. The elephant's just in the bush over here kind of stopped, and she held her head up, indicating that she wasn't entirely happy with our presence. But now she's calmed down again, and the fact that she is feeding again is a good sign for us. And she obviously just wanted to say, don't come any closer just yet. And we'll just sit patiently here waiting for her to pop into a gap. I'm not too sure how many there are in this herd. I think I've seen about 3 so far. Watch how she's using her trunk to smell the road very, very carefully. Not only the road, but she's also possibly looking for some tasty morsels along the way, possibly also analyzing our scent. But an incredible tool, that. And one that takes elephants many, many years to get to grips with. It's not an easy piece of equipment to handle the trunk, and it often makes young elephants quite amusing to watch as they try and learn how to get to grips with that complicated muscle. Sacrosanct on YouTube, you are dead on. Those tusks are very, very wide apart, and all elephants will have slightly different tusks, shapes and sizes, as do we all have slightly different dentition. Oh, it looks like we've caught up to the rest of the herd. There's more than I thought, and there's a few youngsters in amongst them, so this is going to be good. Just want to try and get into spots where we can see the smallest of the young calves. There we go. It's chasing off after its mother. You can see it in there though. We're going to race you across to another little cute and new addition to Juma.
That is such a tiny cub. Just a quick trip to the den to give us an update. There we go, here comes number 2. And look who's decided to pop out and say hello. Oh my goodness. That is so tiny. That cannot be more than 2 weeks old. Hello, little ones. Welcome to the world. It must seem very big and scary. Big matriarch giving them a wash. Oh, disappearing again. Come on, little ones. Now, at this stage, these brief glimpses... Oh, look how wobbly they are. These brief glimpses are an absolute treat. We just have to get lucky in terms of timing. Oopsie daisy. Those back legs not terribly secure. Struggling their way out of the den. And that is so tiny. Hello, you two. And proud mom standing over them. Looking, it must be said, very well fed. She's got a nice round belly. She's obviously had a meal last night and returned to her tiny, tiny babies this morning. Tiny bundles of black fluff. I'm not sure how old these cubs are. My guess would be under 2 weeks old, maybe just at the 2-week mark. Only now becoming brave enough to pop out. We've said that she is the matriarch in this clan. We keep referring to, or I keep referring to in my head as the baby boomers, because they've just supplemented their numbers in the last 3 months by 5 new little cubs. And Safari Dean, you're wondering how big a hyena clan can get and how many clans there are on Djuma, or how, and I suppose an extension of that, how big is this clan? Now, it depends on the area that you're in. So it's very much, for hyenas, it's very much dependent on whether, for example, they're in a arid area like a desert area, or possibly in the open grasslands of Eastern Africa. What is she? Oh, there's some impala behind us, there's a herd of impala. That's what she's looked up at. But her cubs have... There we go. Thanks, Brian. There you go. You can see the impala moving about in the background there. Sorry, Safari Dean, I'll get to your question now. Unlikely to really disturb them, but she's just very alert with those tiny cubs now starting to wander about. So clans have been recorded up to 50 hyena. That's some of the biggest clans you will see, and generally out here, that's a little bit big for this kind of area. So I would say we're probably averaging in this area about 20 or so in a clan. And this clan itself, I would say, I'm still trying to keep track of numbers. There's at least 6 adult females, mature. Hello, little one. June watching on. Shame. Poor little thing. Still no sign of June's mom. Sleeping patiently at the den. Here come the little ones out again. Their first exploration of this world. So we know of at least 6 adult females. I would say this clan probably extends to about 20 in number itself. It's quite a big clan now, particularly with the new additions. So there'll be a lot of sub-adults that are moving around without us seeing them all the time. And there'll also be a couple of males that are either natal males or clan males that move through here. And they stay generally off on their own, but will reunite if there's some kind of threat to the clan. For example, if they're trying to push lions off a kill, or even trying to compete with a neighboring clan. So at the moment, their core territory is Djuma, clearly. Their den sites have all been on Djuma, but their territorial range does extend up into Buffelshoek, as far as we know. Their boundary, in my... so cute. My guesswork, and from what I've observed, seems to be the Triple M boundary. There's a very big clan on Simbambili and Arathusa that is not part of this clan. Sorry guys, just listening to the Game Drive channel. Such a nice, quick update at the den. I'm not going to stay too much longer. I just wanted to pop in and see what was happening, particularly because Kevin Catfish had sent through that update that he thought he heard another hyena fight on the Djuma Dam camera last night. I just wanted to see what was happening. Okay, well, nice quick view of the cubs. I'm going to head out and find different things, but Scott is still with his ellies, so let's head over there.
Welcome back, everyone. And aren't we getting spoiled all of a sudden with the influx of big mammals on screen? And those cute little hyena cubs sound like great fun. Sadly, these elephants have just moved past us into some thick bush, so I'm going to try and reposition again. And while we do so, I would suggest probably sending you guys back to the hyenas, because we're not going to get any good views of these elephants for the time being.
And while Scott repositions Rusty, we haven't actually changed position as to where we are. We hadn't even managed to get the car started yet to make our way out. Now we'll do a question or a quick answer to a question as to whether or not we've named the cubs. I haven't. I'm always a bit hesitant about naming cubs myself, just because those first few weeks of life, the survival sort of is so tentative. Now this clan's doing incredibly well with their cubs. I'll leave it up to all of you. As I said, we've got to be careful about naming them after the months that they're born in, just because we're going to get to June at some point and run into difficulties. We could always throw the end of the year onto the end of the name. It's up to you guys. I quite like to watch and observe their characters start to come through. Michael, it's a little bit too soon to say whether one cub will... No, actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. I actually think it's a little bit late for one cub to have killed the other to establish dominance. So that kind of serious interaction that Michael's talking about, the siblicide that happens between hyena cubs, it's usually when there's two females. And as far as I understand it and the way that it all works, and of course I've never seen it in practice, and the reason behind that is because it happens really early on, from what I understand. So almost from birth, they're born with teeth, and they're born with quite already serious levels of testosterone if they are females. It's not as common as previously thought, but Michael, I actually think it's a little bit late. I think if that had happened, it would have happened by now already. That's my understanding of the way that siblicide plays out, but I'm still struggling with the whole concept and trying to establish exactly how it plays out in reality. It's a combination, apparently, of direct aggression, so direct biting and physical contact, and then also pushing the other cub away to prevent it from feeding. Alrighty, well, I'm going to leave our hyenas. This time I'm actually going to leave our hyenas. Send you back across to Scott, who is with his ellies.
So we're just trying to make the most of this elephant sighting. That's why we're racing you back from side to side here. Because it is thick bush here, and the elephants are moving quite quickly. So I think this is probably going to be our last good opportunity to get a view of them. And we're in luck because the smallest of all the calves is just in there. And the elephants do appear to be feeding slowly towards us. So I think we are going to get one last great view of them as they pass by. Hello to Ginny, who's noticed that some elephants appear to be considerably more wrinkled than others. And that's a good observation, Ginny. The reason for it I cannot tell you. I guess it's just simple genetic variation, just like us as humans have got different traits and different looks. So do the wild animals. And I don't think it can be attributed to age, because some very young elephants appear very wrinkly, as do some old ones. So I don't have a particular theory as to what causes it. I'm not sure if any other people may have any ideas as to what may cause them to be more wrinkly. Tibbs, maybe let's just focus in on the road here and we'll be able to watch this calf following its mother as she crosses. Cute. Let's see. I was hoping it was going to try and use its trunk there. It's far too young to have absolute control over it, but not this time. The rest of the herd are going to pass by a lot closer by, so this should be great. Hello to Jody, who's watching in California, who has just admitted that he is now addicted to SafariLIVE, and that's wonderful to hear. And good to have you with us. It really is quite an experience. I know a lot of people that watch it for the first time are surprised at how addicted they do become to the experience. There's one of our viewers, Brian, in Philadelphia, who discovered the SafariLIVE experience in November 2014 during Big Cat Week back then, and within 6 months he had already booked his first safari and came out and visited at Arathusa, where we met him. And just a warning, Jody, you too could be here in the flesh in just a few months. This is a far better display of how well a trunk can be used by this big female. Very accurately plucking out the pieces of grass that she desired there. Interesting question through from Jeffrey in Texas, who's now asking, why are baby elephants so hunchbacked? And let's see if this one doesn't give us any attitude. Come on, show us who's boss. Was thinking about it, but didn't really want to commit. Sometimes they'll come charging up to the vehicle with the ears out. It looks like the one on the left now, May. Slightly older, maybe slightly more bold. No. But displaying all the behavioral signs that a large elephant would if it was unhappy with our presence. So good to note that behavior. Jeffrey, you haven't noticed that young elephants are hunchbacked. So I'm going to have to take a closer look. I'm not sure if any of you also agree with Jeffrey. I simply don't recall them being very hunchbacked. And therefore, I cannot answer your question any further. May have something to do with the fact that they have been curled up in their mother's stomach for close to 22 months. Very long gestation period. But to me, they don't look hugely different to teenage or adult elephants. And it appears like that is that. The herd has moved through and passed by. Let's see if we can't move back and get you any more views, but I'm not sure if we are going to be able to. One more big female behind us in the road. I don't want to put too much pressure on her as we reverse. Gap is going to be as good as it gets to get a few final glimpses of them. That looks like the youngster that had its ears out and tail up as it crossed the road. Looking a lot more normal now. Hello to Blade, who's watching on YouTube, and Blade would like to know the kind of average length of tusks of elephants, and I would say about 12 inches to 20 inches would be your kind of average length of an elephant's tusk in this area. But it's important to understand, Blade, that occasionally you get some massive big tuskers whose tusks can be 6 feet long. They can touch the ground, and big elephant bulls will actually use them as pillows and just rest their head directly down on their tusks, which are literally scraping the ground. It was also a cause of them to break, that they simply get too long and eventually get in the way of the elephants and are snapped off. So they can get very, very big and long, but in general they're not too long, a foot or two. I think sadly the ivory trade many years ago, which resulted in, oh, here's a surprise, there's one more straggler at the back that we'll get to watch crossing the road in front of us, probably a young bull, although it might actually be a cow. As I was saying there, sadly the ivory trade definitely took its toll on the good genes. It is a young bull, just to confirm this guy. So because a lot of elephants were persecuted for their ivory, obviously the biggest and the most beautiful specimens were the ones that were shot out, and they were shot out in their hundreds and thousands simply for their ivory, and that has caused a decline in good genes. But there are still a few tuskers roaming around the Kruger National Park there. For some reason, we don't get to see big elephant bulls in the Sabi Sands very often, and I'm not too sure why. But they are out and about, and occasionally we could get lucky enough to see them. would you believe it? Brian in Philadelphia, who I was just talking about, is busy watching. And he's the guy who was here in less than 6 months after discovering the show, just to remind you. And Brian's fascinated as to how quietly elephants can move through the bush. And you're right, Brian, it is remarkable. I think they do very accurately place their feet down on areas that are unobstructed by branches and twigs where they can. And often, with a lot of the four-legged animals, their front feet will very often register in the same spot that, or their back feet rather, will register in the same spot that their front feet have stood in. And that obviously decreases the amount of noise they make, but even still, it's remarkable that such large animals can be just so silent. Well, Jamie's just got to find one of her kind of case studies that she's been following up on over the last few days, and I don't want to get you guys to miss out on any action there. So over to her, and we will catch up shortly.
We've just run into our group of kudu that we've been following over the last few days. Definitely 3 very pregnant females here. They're playing hard to get though. They're playing shy. I think this is the one with the identifying stripe pattern on her bottom. I say it's our group of kudu. I'm fairly certain it is, because they've also got a young, tiny little male with them. He's only just starting to get his horns. Something's captured her attention. But for new viewers or viewers who might have missed out on the last few weeks' worth of shows, we've been following this herd of kudu because there are 3 females that are almost at bursting point, and at least one of them that, when I last saw her, looked as though she was about to start lactating. Her baby births are imminent. Here she's going to come out nicely for us. Here we go. Hello, big girl. Hi. They're nice, luckily nice and relaxed with us, so running to catch up with the rest of the group. They're far more relaxed than the other kudu that I've spotted around here. There's no sign of any youngsters yet. The day will come, though. I'm fairly certain that these ladies are about to pop. I'll give them one more moment to just start moving off a little bit before I go forward. Disappeared straight into a monkey orange thicket. And very distantly in the background, let me see if I can hear it again for you, there's a frog calling. It's amazing how even the smallest bit of rain brings out both the insects and the frogs, and it's a foam nest frog that is calling. Wandering into the drainage line. You can also hear some oxpeckers calling. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some buffalo around the corner. Can you hear them buzzing away? I'll try and get you one last view. Oh, I think they're actually going to do that for us. Come on, girls. You're going to be obliging. There goes the little male that I was talking about with the tiny little horns, just starting to come through. And he's also quite a useful identifying individual. Awesome. Well, nice to update ourselves as to the progress of the pregnancies, which also, as it happens, is quite nice alliteration. But our kudu are not playing easy to see this morning, so let's head back to Scott and his elephants.
Well, we've been very fortunate in that this herd of elephants appear to be now moving parallel to Gallagher shortcut, the road that we are currently on, and my concerns for not being able to stay with them have now been proved wrong. I'm just going to roll forward ever so slightly here, see if we can't get a little gap to watch this calf. There we go. And who knows when those kudu will give birth. But exciting stuff, and well done to Jamie for following that so closely. Well, I didn't catch the middle of your name, but it's the real somebody, Bill, I think. Oh, the real Darty Bill. Good to know we've got another new viewer. And you'd like to know if I've ever been sprayed by an elephant. And you specifically termed or used water, being sprayed by water. I haven't been sprayed by water. I've been sprayed by dust, as they are dust bathing, but never yet by water, sadly. But who knows, maybe that'll happen once we get a little bit more rain. It certainly is possible. It's happened to colleagues of mine in the past. But I cannot say that I've been lucky enough to have an elephant shower just yet. Cool, we've just got a very interesting question through from Paul. Now, Paul has heard that an elephant will... Okay, settle down. An elephant will never cross a ditch that its trunk cannot reach the bottom of. And I would tend to disagree with that, Paul. If I think logically, if there was a very narrow ditch... Oh, look at the calf coming across, head up, tail out. Obviously got a little bit too far away from Mum and started panicking. But Paul, if there was a very narrow gap that an elephant needed to stand over, I've never actually seen elephants testing the depth of any kind of gap that they have needed to move across. So I'm not sure who told you that or where you found out about that, but it doesn't seem to make sense to me at the outset. Like I say, you could have a very narrow gap of maybe 6 inches that could be kilometers deep, but an elephant's not going to be concerned about stepping over it. So I think we can dispel that myth or theory. We're going to have to wait here. This cow's getting a little bit worked up with us. Look at her sniffing us intently there, aiming her trunk directly at us. What's wrong? We've been following you for long now. We haven't caused any trouble. You just carry on looking for food. Now, as we watch some interesting body language from this elephant, Nature Watch is interested to understand if they can communicate by stomping their feet on the ground. And no, not as far as I'm aware, Nature Watcher, but they can communicate infrasonically with vibrations that are inaudible to the human ear, that travel through the earth and are absorbed through the feet of elephants up into their body and then processed as messages. So those vibrations can travel for many, many miles through the ground. And that's why sometimes while we are watching elephants, they'll all of a sudden stop and even rest their trunk on the ground, have all 4 feet firmly planted on the ground, not be moving, And the whole herd will do it simultaneously to receive these infrasonic vibrations. But I've never seen or heard of them communicating by stomping their feet down. Now, a lot of you would have noticed that while we've been watching these elephants, they have been on the move, but they've also been feeding as they go. And Kim B would like to know, how much time will elephants spend feeding during a day? Well, they'll spend about 16 hours a day on the move / feeding. They usually sleep around 8 hours during a 24-hour period. Just going to see if we can get Tebs into a slightly better position here. So, about 16 hours a day, they'll be awake, and when they're awake, they're basically constantly feeding. And they need to acquire very, very large amounts of vegetable matter every day. Can be about 4% of their body weight, which amounts to a massive, massive amount of food daily. For a big 6-ton elephant bull, it could be as much as 250 to 300 kilograms, which you basically double to get pounds, so about 500 to 600 pounds, even slightly more than that. And in order to acquire that much food, they need to focus heavily on feeding. And that's what we can see them doing now. Constantly just keeping their bellies full. The reason for it, Kim, is they've got a very poor digestive system, so they don't receive huge amounts of nutrients from the plants that they eat. Unlike the ruminants, the animals with 4-chambered stomach that will chew the cud, so they'll re-chew on already swallowed and chewed on food to even more finely break it down and make it easier to absorb minerals and nutrients in their digestive tracts. The elephants are not like that, and the food passes through just about the way it went in. Hello to Kathy, who's watching all the way in Memphis, and happy to hear that you enjoyed the views we got of those cute little calves a bit earlier. They are one of my favorite animals to watch, young elephants. Kathy would also like to know if these elephants within a herd are probably all related, and yes, they are all distantly related. How it works is that there'll be a female who's in charge of the herd, so it's a matriarchal society where the females make the decisions in the herds. The men only come and go when there's opportunities to mate, so they don't have a huge role, or any role really, in the upbringing of calves. And how it will work is that young elephants will stay with their mothers until they're about 10 to 15 years of age. And then the bulls, the young males, will tend to move off and join bachelor groups, whereas the females will stay within their herds. So they'll get to know their cousins and other offspring within the herd very well, and it'll tend to keep a kind of family line going within a herd. There'll be many different females that will probably stay in the same herd as their mother. And they can give birth around every 3 to 4 years, elephants. So over a lifespan of about 60 years on average, they can give birth to quite a few calves, and those can all stay within the herd if they are female. If they are male, they will move off though. just going to reposition again, and while we do so, I can answer a question from Maggie M, who's interested to know if we found a piece of ivory, a broken tusk in the field, would we be allowed to keep it? And technically, I don't think we would, Maggie. I've never come across elephant tusks before. I found warthog tusks and hippo's teeth, but never the tusk of an elephant. But it would probably be wise not to hold on to it, because the ivory trade is illegal, and unless you're an owner of land like this, you wouldn't have a justifiable reason to have the ivory. And that's technically what happens with skulls and ivory that are found. I know Dave in Wisconsin was interested to know what happens with all of the skulls and bits and pieces that are found that people may like to hold on to, and they technically typically get kept to show people, put in the lodge area so that people get to see the massive skulls of elephants, or used in museums. But that's the prerogative of the person who owns the land wherever that skull is found. Oh, well, the sun is poking through, and immediately I can feel the sweat building on my forehead within just a few seconds of it beaming down on us. And we've been fortunate so far this morning to not have any sunshine, because it gets incredibly hot as soon as it does come out. What's interesting here is this herd is fragmented into two pieces. Earlier I heard some trumpeting coming far from the left, and that's where the majority of the herd appeared to have headed off to, whereas half of it is over here. And that's not uncommon for herds to split up and regroup. Kind of slowing down their pace though a little bit, and you'll probably find that they'll continue to do so until kind of mid-morning, until probably between 10 and 2 p.m. They'll take a bit of a 4-hour midday siesta under a tree in the shade, and then they'll probably get about another 4 hours of sleep at some time during the night. So I've noticed that elephants often split their sleep periods up into different chunks, unlike us who get our 8 hours roughly of sleep only at night. Well, I lie, actually. We're almost on a similar wavelength to them at the moment, because we are waking up so early in the morning. We try to get in a midday snooze, so we're splitting up our sleep portions in a similar fashion to the elephants. And it certainly is going to take a bit of getting used to waking up at 3:45 in the morning after being on leave for 2.5 weeks, waking up leisurely whenever you decide to. Chris in British Columbia is interested to know a little bit more about the eyesight of elephants and whether they are colorblind. And apparently, Chris, they can see in shades of red and green and don't have the best eyesight. It's quite easy to sneak up to elephants, provided the wind is in your favor. Not quite as easy as rhinos, so their eyes are definitely better than rhinos. But, oh, there goes a tree. That was lucky. Pushed it down just into a little gap just before we got moving. And at this time of the year, it's not uncommon for this to happen. Now what she's going to do is, this is perfect. She's going to try and feed on the leaves of this tree that were obviously very difficult for her to reach while the tree was standing up. Hence her decision to capsize it. And it's a very necessary form of destruction that we see these elephants performing. A lot of people kind of cringe at the sight every time an elephant breaks down a tree, but it's all part of Mother Nature's process to make sure that this area doesn't become too thick and uninhabitable for other animals that need to live here. And that tree that's just been pushed down will form a nursery where small trees can grow unaffected by other animals that will battle to access them. So it's all part of a plan. There's a knobthorn acacia that she pushed down, and you can see all of the knobs on that tree, hence the name, as well as all of the other trees in the foreground. It's quite an interesting thing though, not all knobthorn acacias will be as knobbly as